The Little Mermaid. Disney wants to launch as many live-action remakes of cartoon classics as possible, and it makes a lot of sense. On paper. It is a smart and more or less risk-free way to make money. But Disney is a corporation with strong beliefs, so they apparently figured out that material possessions are not that important after all. They are not here to make profit, they are here to educate us. Well, unless you live in Asia, where they alter the posters for their movies, because the locals there are not very interested in watching African Americans on the silver screen. Which is okay since, say, people in China are already diverse enough. They are mostly Chinese, overwhelmingly Chinese. The Little Mermaid is the latest of their remakes, with a $250 million budget and an African American actress playing the titular role. The reason for this unorthodox casting decision is, as always, the same: to accuse people of racism when they tell you that this is a bit too much, this is pointless, and it looks like a deliberate attempt to insult your audience. The reason for a $250 million budget is currently unclear, because the CGI sequences most of the time look quite cheap, and there were probably kickbacks involved. That's a very reasonable explanation for this sudden drop in quality. The film itself pretty much follows the plot of the 1989 cartoon. Well, what do you expect? But adds a number of modern and educated twists. The first of them is obviously this forced diversity, which is not the best idea and is usually seen as some kind of violence. The mainstream critics will obviously say that, Halle Bailey is actually doing a good job, so it's not a big deal that she's African American. That's very debatable. Casting a black actress in place of a European-looking character in a work of fiction is not necessarily a big deal, unless you turn it into a big deal. And we all know, at this point, that Disney employs black swapping not as an artistic tool. This is just pure politics and nothing else. This forced diversity is annoying at best. And it is perceived as annoying and deliberately produced with some malignant intent, even in the more or less diverse environment of the United States, the country of origin, and in a handful of Western European countries. In all other places, some of them are actually quite diverse as well, in all other places, these exercises of modern Hollywood became essentially a butt of a joke. People there produce memes that say that in the past 30 years, the mermaid gradually turned black because of the systematic pollution of the oceans, which can be seen as a racist joke in the United States. But outside of it, people are, they're not involved in the race wars and just cautiously observe this insanity, hoping it won't affect them too much. So is Halle Bailey doing a good job? She's trying. But arguably, she doesn't have enough charisma to overshadow this tragic miscast. Yeah, she can sing. That's how she got the role in the first place. Well, this and probably the fact that she's part of the duo signed to Beyoncé's label. Let's be honest, she's not the only person in the world who can sing. Naturally, our mermaid is not the only diverse person in the movie. Forced diversity is everywhere, which paints an absolutely surreal picture. Yes, it's a fairy tale, but it is set on planet Earth, and it is a very strange planet, sometimes disturbingly strange. First of all, we have this sea kingdom ruled by King Triton, played by Javier Bardem. The king has several daughters, mermaids, who are very different anthropologically. I'm not sure we can use the word anthropology when we're talking about merfolk, but you get the idea. So these mermaid princesses are a diversity buffet. A couple of them are European-looking, then one Indian, one Asian, one black, and one even more black. What is this? What's the point? How does this work? Does this king have several wives? Disney is promoting polygamy, or what? Merfolk apparently have a very interesting biology. Then there is a world over the sea. Everything takes place on a fictional island, presumably somewhere in the Caribbean. This island is a kingdom ruled by a black queen and inhabited by a very diverse population. Which begs the question how their ancestors ended up on this island and how exactly this society works. And it is probably an 18th century society, or something like that. Also, this Black Queen adopted some random European boy and made him an heir to the throne, which is a very interesting political situation, to put it mildly. Obviously, since it is a fairy tale for children, nobody thought about the reality and about the actual implications of all this madhouse. They just care that kids in the audience will remember how Ebony and Ivory live in perfect harmony, as they do in the United States. Obviously, since we're dealing with Disney, the next upgrade of the source material is gonna be in the feminism department, or more precisely, in the department of feminism through the eyes of an imbecile. So the new mermaid is quite empowered and doesn't really need her prince at all. She even kills the final boss, the witch, herself. And she decided to become a human mostly out of curiosity. The prince is a factor, but not the main one. And this is one of the biggest problems of the movie. The original fairy tale of Hans Christian Andersen was about love and self-sacrifice. The Disney cartoon was about love and an attempt of self-sacrifice. The new movie takes the self-sacrifice aspect out of the equation because the narcissistic screenwriters probably don't understand why anybody would do that, especially an empowered female character. Hollywood executives apparently think that love is basically what people do in the bedroom or at an orgy. This is quite serious and probably even more serious than this pointless tokenization of African Americans served as deal with it racist morons. I watched the Japanese cartoon before the Disney's version, and as a kid I actually really liked that the mermaid didn't die. Everything ended quite well in the American cartoon. Obviously, as I grew older, I started to appreciate the original ending more. Because this is the original ending of Andersen's fairy tale. The mermaid kills herself and becomes a sea form. First, Disney cheapened, but within reason, this idea of a self-sacrificial love. But what they are doing right now is a good illustration of the moral bankruptcy of the current political agenda. They tried to replace the sacrifice of the mermaid with the not quite a self-sacrifice of her father. It's better than nothing, but these people probably don't have a clue about the concept of love, and instead are trying to emulate some approximation of that, like an AI memorizing other people's words and constructing an idea with only a mathematical algorithm behind it. These people probably even have serious problems with basic empathy. But they dare to preach, they dare to sermonize, and they dare to shame other people. So, what have we learned from The Little Mermaid? Merfolk biology is weird. Melissa McCarthy can be tolerable. We should probably boycott movies with Aquafina at this point. $250 million blockbusters can look cheap. Disney movies are not suitable for children. In the end, this is a bloated 2-hour movie produced by evil corporate drones, which tries to teach kids a couple of lessons they don't need to hear. About love, about how diversity and tolerance works, about emancipation. I actually wrote down an interesting quote from the movie, an overlooked quote, which I think serves as a suitable conclusion for the review. Don't be held back by what you think should be, think only of what is. Sounds fantastic and delivered as some kind of words of wisdom of a profound character. But think about this quote for a couple of minutes and about the implications. This is potentially a very destructive philosophy.